This video will show how to improve tuning of an acoustic guitar. This procedure is called intonation, and some electric guitars have it as a ready option. Yet an acoustic instrument can be adapted similarly with minimal craftsmanship and using just a simple set of kitchen tools. I'll make adjustments to a Western guitar Yamaha LL16 equipped with 12 clear-tone ultralight phosphor bronze strings, and a classical Spanish guitar Cuenca 50R equipped with the Adagio high-tension nylon strings. Both guitars can be regarded as low-budget professional or semi-professional instruments, designed mostly for accompaniment. That would say playing within the first 5 frets. Yet if your ambition stretches to the whole fretboard, in contrast to your budget that does not stretch to a more expensive make, this video might provide a simple solution. Before we proceed any further, I would like to discuss a relevant issue of string action. Thus, both guitars under consideration had in their original setups very high notes, as well as very high string action. The latter term means the height of strings above the fretboard. Lowering of action has some consequence for the tuning, as will be explained in a moment. Therefore, I can suggest that first you adjust the knot and the height of strings to the desired level, and only afterward proceed to the fine tuning. YouTube presents a number of videos concerning lowering of guitar strings. Therefore, I just briefly recapitulate the main steps. Clearly enough, you have to remove all the original strings. Then take out the knot. It is not fixed and can be easily removed. Finally, file off the knot's bottom, and this can be done even with a piece of sandpaper. If the sanding was too excessive, you can always increase the height of knot by putting down a piece of thin plastic, which you can cut out from any old plastic package with flat sides. Alternatively, you can put at the knot's bottom a slip of isolation tape, perhaps 1 or 2 layers, clipped to the right size. In such way, it is possible to make very fine adjustments of the knot's height. The overall action of strings on a Western guitar is regulated by its truss rod, and its adjustment bolt can be accessed via the sound hole. Put in the wrench, usually supplied with the guitar, and make a clockwise turn, for example by a quarter, as shown in the inset. Obviously enough, this adjustment requires presence of strings to control their height above the fretboard, yet their tension should be lowered. Classical guitars have no truss rod, and the action of strings is regulated by the height of saddle. The latter can be lowered by sanding off its bottom in a way as was explained for the knot. Now, when we have made all the adjustment to knot, saddle, etc., we can discover that the tuning of strings changed and probably worsened. The following schemes will explain the observed effect. The upper scheme shows the original guitar with a high action of strings, while the lower scheme presents the adjusted guitar with a low action of strings. Both pictures are slightly exaggerated for the sake of a better visualization. You can easily deduce that the change of action does not affect tuning of open strings, because we determine it. Yet, when a string is pressed somewhere at fret 12, the two guitars will give different pitch. The string of the adjusted guitar is stretched less and gives a lower frequency. The discussed examples illustrate that any adjustment of action would probably require a change of intonation in your guitar. Before we can do it, we need some equipment to measure the frequency of sound. This can be done by any suitable device or software, for example, a hardware tuner, a computer program, or a mobile app. The latter solution is the easiest one, and I use the convenient free app for Android called PitchLab. This app has several windows, but I can recommend the one with the precise digital indications of frequencies, plus a needle which shows a relative precision, given as a percent of distance from the nearest semitone. Our purpose will be to keep the tuning of all strings at all frets within the easy detectable boundaries, let us say from 0 to 5%. The next figure gives an overview of measurements that can be expected for a perfect instrument. Open strings of a guitar in the standard tuning have a span from the low E2 to the high E4, and here I show the whole list of frequencies for a 6-string guitar. Mind that the A tone can be considered as a reference. Transition to an arbitrary tone can be done using the system of equal temperament, which connects all tones and semitones with the reference A, as well as the sounds of open strings and strings pressed at different frets. The provided equation will help you to derive any theoretical frequency at any arbitrary fret. Mind that an octave has 12 semitones, and the increase by octave doubles the frequency. In other words, the sound at 12th fret gives the twofold higher pitch in comparison to an open string. If we compare the theoretical and real values at fret 12, we can estimate the precision of tuning of a test guitar. According to my experience, the deviation between real and theoretical sounds should be less than 0.15% if related to the sound itself, or less than 2.5% if related to the distance to the nearest semitone. As I have already mentioned, the convenient boundaries cover the span from 0 to 5% in PitchLab app. I would like to stress that this is rather difficult to exert a standard pressure on strings by your fingers. If you press a string stronger than necessary, you'll get a higher pitch. Therefore, this is a good idea to use a capo to get a reference pressure. And here I show the theoretical frequencies for fret number 9. When performing real measurements, I used a Thalia capo where I have inserted a high-tension Teflon fret pad with the radius suitable for Yamaha fretboard. You should keep in mind that the pressure from a capo is not completely identical to the pressure from fingers. Yet, in my opinion, the minor imprecision from fingers is much less irritating than a general discordance provided by a capo, if no intonation has been done. Therefore, in my efforts to intonate the test guitars, I try to compensate the effect of a capo and avoid retuning after each change of its position. After this theoretical introduction, I am going to take a measure of 2 sample strings. Let us concentrate our attention on the first pair of strings, E4, where I have already done the intonation. I'll play them in the open position and then move, let us say, to fret 7, 9 and 12. In parallel, we can monitor the frequency measurements. This is quite visible that the first string is tuned along the whole fretboard. Now let me test the third pair of strings, G3 and G4, where no intonation has been done yet. Here comes the final chart, indicating that the frequencies of both third strings, green and blue lines, go down at high frets. This means that they are too long and should be shortened by adding an individual artificial saddle, placing it before the main one. In contrast, if the measured frequency is too high, then the intonation saddle should be placed behind the main one, and the latter should be filed down at this particular place. Where can we get the additional intonation saddles? Actually, we can cut them out from any plastic object. For example, you can buy a new saddle and cut out a suitable piece. Yet, any hard plastic material will suit our purpose, including shelf support packs, some window fixation gadgets, etc. In other words, any plastic widget in your tool drawer. After you have cut out a piece with more or less suitable dimensions, it should be sanded a little to make a better fitting to the place. 30 years ago I used many efforts to make an aesthetic shaping, but now I can tell that a rough piece serves its purpose as good as a polished fragment. When you consider the intonation saddle ready, insert it under the strings with help of pincers. A Western guitar is an easy object for our purpose because its bridge is flat. Therefore, the homemade separate saddles can be placed on such bridge without any fixation and kept there just by the pressure from strings. When you are completely satisfied by the result, the extra saddles can be glued to the main one if necessary. I am going to shorten the deviating string number 3. Therefore, I have to place the intonation saddle before the main one to get a higher pitch at higher frets. Under these circumstances, I put the guitar in a vertical position, because this is just convenient. I have already decreased tension of the relevant strings, and my remaining task is to insert this plastic fragment using pincers. Here we are. Finally, I have to wind up the strings, and while doing this, I'll keep the intonation saddle in place by pincers to prevent it from falling down during stretching of the strings. Finally, let us test the result of intonation. I'll start with the string pair number 3, then I'll play all of them first in open position and then in fret number 9. Now let us play all the strings. This figure shows a close view of the bridge on Yamaha after intonation. The scale of dimensions is given in millimeters. I also provide the original average imprecision of tuning on fret 12 in respect to the theoretically predicted tone. In such way you can easily estimate the approximate size of plastic fragments to obtain the necessary correction. Yet I think that the most practical way is to follow the method of trials and errors by adding artificial saddles of different thickness, let us say from 1 to 2 millimeters. An inset shows the close schematic view of intonation saddles in several variants. Mind that positioning behind the main saddle requires some filing of the latter to a lower level. One single buzzing string can be adjusted by lifting its level without intonation. The bridge of a classical guitar is a more complicated affair. It is curved, and you cannot just put a small piece of plastic and expect it to remain in its place. It should be either glued on or, as in the shown case, set against the bottom of the bridge, used as a support. All nylon strings are rather thick, and their cutting force is much less than with the steel strings. Therefore, a relatively soft plastic can definitely withstand their pressure. In this example, I used both soft plastic and hard plastic, as indicated in the figure. Hard plastic was used for short, nearly vertical plastic fragments. By the way, the original saddle of this guitar is completely filed off and does not protrude above the level of bridge surface. And now let us test both guitars in a real situation playing at higher frets.